Oh my.
Oh, yes.
That was a great barbecue, by the way.
It was. Twinkles. Was twinkles. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
And I'm J-Lo.
And this is part 2 of H.P. Lovecraft, where we are going to be discussing my doctoral thesis on the Necronomicon. Just to recap the last episode, we touched on how Lovecraft basically operated under the philosophy of cosmicism, and we touched on his dream life, his being exposed at a young age to various mythical, religious, spiritual, anthropological, and due to his grandfather being a high-ranking Freemason, potentially occult books as a young child, as well as this lending to his rich dream life and a life of being his, nocturnal life being filled, well, let's say sleep being filled with night terrors.
And nocturnal emissions.
Yes, many nocturnal emissions. I'm sure that's what fucked him up to the degree he was, as well as an undiagnosed sleep paralysis thingy that screwed with his mind. All this bred into his later in life neuroses and trauma, and this sort of feeds into whether or not he may have actually been in touch with some outer worldly force. So,
without further ado,
yes,
may I introduce to you the Necronomicon.
So, the Necronomicon is what's considered a grimoire. Anyone?
What's a grimoire?
Okay, I thought you were going to do that's amore, but yeah.
Well, I can still do it.
That's fine.
When the abyss kisses your eye, that's grimoire.
Nice.
When you find pieces of poo in your food, that's grimoire. Come and have a shine, come and have a shine. In your eye, that's grimoire?
Hey, baby.
Yeah.
Does that sound like him a little bit? Or is that more of the monster from...
It almost sounded like that guy that said, I gotta pretend that the camera is a girl?
Oh, man. People cater that shit. Okay, so... a grimoire is related to the word grammar, and just as grammar is often taught in conjunction with spelling, it is through the study of a grimoire from which one learns spells. Words and names have power, especially magic words, and names may be used to better define and or crystallize a concept.
Like when we swear a lot.
Yes, F&A, as well as bind a person, place, thing, or idea within the confines of its given name. This is exactly what caused Rumpelstiltskin to get so pissed off he pretty much fucking exploded. A more modern take on this would be that, the first step in getting to know someone is to know their name, or if you wanted to steal their identity, so I'm told. A fairly concise metaphor makes an appearance in the foreword to the Simon Necronomicon, which we'll discuss in detail later. It says, regarding grimoires, these were the sorcerer's handbooks, and generally not meant as textbooks or encyclopedias of ceremonial magic. In other words, the sorcerer or magician is supposed to be in possession of the requisite knowledge and training with which to carry out a complex magical ritual, just as a cook is expected to be able to master the scrambling of eggs before he conjures an Eggs Benedict. The grimoires or black books were simply variations on a theme like cookbooks.
Yeah, like making a roux.
Yeah.
Or a mirepoix.
Some of that andouille.
You have to base all foods on a mirepoix. It's just the foundation of all the greatest magic.
Yeah, exactly. The old timers knew it. Yes, like cookbooks, different records of what previous magicians had done, the spirits they'd contacted, and the successes or failures they had. The magicians who now read these works are expected to be able to select the wheat from the chaff, but I don't think those are Eggs Benedict ingredients, so it's a little bit of a mixed metaphor.
Depends on how many fusion restaurants you attend.
That's true. Gastropoobs.
Gross.
Yeah. I sometimes have gastropoobs, but I drink a soda and they kind of calm down and get it out in one big one. So, yes, from there...
This gives a lot of credence to what Alan Moore is talking about when it comes to being a bard and the power of the bard.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, imagination, writing, poetry, like, these things come from somewhere, ideas come from somewhere. And I'd even go so far as to say, the idea, a unicorn is real in that the idea of a unicorn, you know what it is when I say unicorn.
It exists.
Yes, it exists to a degree.
It exists more than I do.
Yeah, because when you're gone, people will still,
remember unicorns.
Yeah,
exactly. Or
so,
most people around the world who have no fucking clue who I am. No, but they know unicorns. So it's realer than I.
Yeah.
I'll try and dig up your body later.
Yeah, we'll put a horn on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this leads me into the concept of channeled texts. So I'm sure that most of our listeners, at one point or another in their lives, have probably heard about or been bombarded with the horse shit originating from the all-time #1 bestseller that most people probably know as the Bible. In fact...
Holly Bibley.
Yeah. In fact, apparently some fairly rich guy out there who goes by the name of Gideon apparently travels a lot and eventually leaves these damn things in hotels across the nation. Anyways.
Bill Hicks posits that they're done by ninjas.
Yeah. Hello, I'm missing a Bible in my hotel room. Anyway, so the Bible, yeah. Some people call it, or say that the Bible is actually an acronym for Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. And that particular person is Kill a Priest. And his version of the Bible is my favorite. But I digress. See, the thing with the Bible is, turns out that most of that book wasn't actually directly written by human beings. In fact, quite a bit of it was actually either inspired by or straight up dictated out loud by various entities who claim to be angels. And like so many dickhead cartoon bosses treat their secretary, they would have, have some meat puppet basically end up writing it all out for them. So, something to the effect of...
What was it? The Council of Nicaea all got together and they're like, this book's good, this one's good. Hey, you know what? This book of Raphael, I don't like the way this guy looks at me.
Crash it. Yeah, some angel comes down and says, and so, in closing, I'd just like to say, blah, 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 blee, blue, blue, blah. Dictated but not read, Uriel, have it carved in stone and left on my desk by whore lunch. Sometimes a lot of them Bible writers were actually just recording whatever visions it was they had or were seeing after having accidentally given themselves a bad case of ergot poisoning.
This sounds like a reoccurring theme throughout classical history.
Oh, yes. Also, from not quite fully understanding that their brains might have been broken. That's another factor. Luckily, now there's all kinds of pills to stop that if you wanted to stop. Revelations was probably a whole hell of a lot like Terminator 2 or maybe some other shit like Avatar or The Matrix. Basically, yeah. Oh, that's the theme song to Revelations. If there ever was one. So basically, all this shit ends up getting instantly downloaded into your head, then being projected over your eyes, or however it was they watched movies back in shitty olden Bible times. The whole visions of Revelations thing probably fucked up old Johnny Boy, but good, I'm sure. Anyways, that's got to be hands down the most popular book in the entire world throughout all of history, right? It's strange to think so much of it was essentially delivered from something hailing from someplace else to whoever it was that was actually given the duty or responsibility of actually writing all that shit down. But
or claiming to be the ultimate deity of the cosmos when they're not.
Yes, exactly. No. But hey, guess what? This is by far not the only example of such a book written this way that incorporates a sort of working relationship between a human being and some non-human entity or non-corporeal intelligence. It just so happens to be the example that everyone's pretty much heard of. And that's not even really including, Matt pointed out before, all the various, apocrypha that were not included, and so on and so forth. So just a couple of 1,100 years later, blah, 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 fast forward, along comes creepy Uncle Al, a.k.a. our buddy Aleister Crowley, who in his mind likely considered turnabout is fair play, and eventually goes on to receive his very own inspired text in the form of the Book of the Law, as was dictated to him over the course of several days and nights by an entity that he referred to as Ivas, or Iwas. There's multiple pronunciations.
Not to be confused with ayahuasca?
No. Well, there might be a connection there, actually. Who knows? He'd later go on to claim that Aiwass was his holy guardian angel, as well as some of the other occult works he did, such as The Vision and the Voice, which was made up of various pithy quotes from various channeled entities, including the infamous pseudo-proto-gray alien he called Lamb. Have y'all seen the picture of this thing?
No.
This entity he contacted, it looks like this came out in like 45, maybe earlier. No, probably earlier than that.
Does it look just like a gray?
Yeah, before even grays were a thing. It looks exactly like one. He would eventually go on to attempt making the Book of the Law more or less equivalent to the Bible as the central text of his own belief system, which he called Thelema. Then just a few more decades later, in the 1950s and 60s, would occur a phase in alleged human-alien contact, most popularly known as the Space Brother phase. Hoo boy. During which a select few everyday jerk-offs would end up becoming specially selected, quote-unquote, by various visiting extraterrestrials.
Wait, you mean like important everyday people?
No, not at all. You'll see. The various extraterrestrials, etc., mostly being of a suspiciously human-like appearance, sometimes big-breasted and quite randy, and speaking perfect English, belonging to a race that's strangely enough today referred to by the descriptive moniker of the Nordics. I'm sure most people familiar with ufology have heard of these guys. They look like big Norwegians, basically.
They look like Hitler's ideal.
Yeah. What's up, Norway? Who, for reasons our feeble little human minds are incapable of ever comprehending, basically opted to choose their inconceivably scientifically advanced starships, which were used to travel whole entire light years, numbering in such incredibly high quantities that they even included fucking X's and dots and shit, and little smaller floating numbers on their tail ends.
Wait. Spaceships were required to register their vehicles back then?
Probably. There is a galactic command.
Intergalactic order of planets?
Yeah. It's a good thing to know that bureaucracy precedes humanity and Earth, doesn't it? Even after all of this, they would ultimately end up choosing to, quote-unquote, reveal themselves to dudes who are cab drivers or flipped burgers for a living. Not that those aren't in and of themselves noble professions, but it's kind of a challenge to envision any world in which these were the particular people that end up getting shit done, so to speak, let alone end up being taken seriously anytime yet another one of these guys would come out of the fucking woodwork and think that anyone would ever truly have taken them seriously once they started spouting off about how some buxom, beautiful, and apparently quite randy alien had shown up and chosen them specifically to deliver their all-important message, which more often than not usually amounted to little more than some judgmental, holier-than-thou, go tell it on the mountain sermon or screed, or about eventually, basically it always boiled down to the environment's fucked and you're ruining the environment, and oh, by the way, atomic weapons are some scary shit.
Breaking news.
Yeah, like we didn't already fucking know.
So wait, so like the people that got involved in this that were these fry cooks and cab drivers, the people that are just getting stuff done.
Yeah.
The movers and shakers of the world here were actually like being visited by these busty aliens, and they're saying that it's the reverse version of Earth Girls Are Easy.
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's like, depending on which ufological historical account you listen to, I mean, some supposedly say that the Greys made contact with Eisenhower, and there was a treaty signed. Mm-hmm. And then eventually the Greys would balk out of the treaty, basically, and start abducting humans and sticking shit up our asses and whatnot.
Yeah.
Anyhoozle. One of these very same original hippy-dippy glorious golden granola space brothers would eventually end up parking his slab in far outer Earth orbit and apparently sticking around for a while, and eventually go on to allegedly be channeled by numerous human radios known as channelers. His name was Ashtar, and he claimed to be some kind of high-ranking military official in charge of what was known as the Galactic Command Fleet. I assume he must have fucked up something pretty bad to have pulled such a shit detail. These types of interstellar shenanigans would continuously take place, with various channelers occasionally making appearances in the media on a slow news week, on or off all throughout the 60s up into present day, with some of the more well-known chosen ones, quote-unquote, such as a lady by the name of J.Z. Knight, that acts as the mouthpiece and earthbound PR department for an entity named Ramtha, here to help us all see our way to enlightenment, simply by spending a ridiculous amount of money and tuition to attend what better fucking not be a tax-exempt organization, which is imaginatively titled the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And don't worry, if you can't afford true enlightenment, there's still plenty of books and DVDs for sale that'll get you there one empty platitude at a time. There's many others of a quite similar ilk, all of them sporting suitably spooky outer space names such as Cryon, Orthon, Ra, or Seth. I'm pretty sure Seth is here to sell us a timeshare, much to the chagrin of the reptilians, I'm sure. These various disembodied space bros continue to speak through various specially selected representatives to this very day.
Made up by the CIA.
Some, probably. Or, I've heard tell of Russian telepathic Cold War channels and things like that. You bring, whatchamacallit?
A cooler and a chair.
And some beer and get ready to remote view.
We're going to remote view the shit out of this game.
They even sometimes start LARPs or UFO cults, such as the Uranius Society, not to be confused with the Aetherius Society, nor either should those be confused with the Urantia book, yet another channeled text from some inhuman intelligence upon high. With the nearly carcinogenic levels of snark I seethe when discussing most of these people, please don't think that I necessarily call bullshit on all of it. This is just largely in part due to illustrate and aid in setting a precedent, as all of this simply amounts to laying the groundwork for our primary topic this episode. That absolute most dreadful of tomes, once known long ago as Al-Azif in the original Arab tongue, of its author, the so-called Mad Arab, which I kind of feel slightly uncomfortable calling him that, Abdul Al-Hazred. And I don't know if you remember from our last episode, but Al-Hazred was a little bit of a nickname that Lovecraft's grandfather gave him. What with his interest in the Arabian Nights, etc. His ancient, blasphemous tome, known to go by its more famous title of the Greek translation, the Necronomicon. I believe that these following excerpts from a highly intriguing book called Egregores, the Occult Entities That Watch Over Human Destiny by Mark Stavish. Very interesting book. Highly recommended. These pretty much wrap up my current train of thoughts at this moment. The Necronomicon is by far Lovecraft's greatest and most famous literary achievement, first appearing in his short story The Hound, written in 1922 and published in 1924. The Necronomicon is a fictional magical book, or grimoire. The book is purported to have been written by a character known as the Mad Arab, Abdul Al-Hazred, and contains the history and rites for summoning the Old Ones. The Old Ones are described as primordial beings who came to the earth from the sky and are now trapped beneath the ocean in the mystical city of Urla? I'm not even sure how to pronounce it. I found many different...
That which cannot be pronounced by man.
Yes, it's unimaginable. Beneath the South Pacific Ocean, the bloop, once again. Lovecraft stated that the idea and title for the Necronomicon came to him in a dream, although mystical texts of various sorts were a common literary device in Gothic and horror writing. However, few fictional books have taken on the life and vitality of Lovecraft's creation. A close examination shows that nearly all of the famous magical texts in Western occultism were in some way contrived. The Solomonic and Faustian literature are prime examples. In Tibet, certain similar circumstances occur with revelations of the origins and teachings, of the origin and teachings with the Terma teachings. These are like hidden treasure time capsule revelations of sorts.
Wait, so at these temples, they're like, okay, class of negative 600.
Yeah.
We're gonna put this in here.
No one tells anyone. It's like a secret time capsule of teachings and revelations that's hidden away, and then however many years later someone will meditate or have a dream if they're chosen or whatever, and
it's all will be revealed.
Yeah, exactly. So like they find out where these things are hidden, and this is actually like when you think about it, it's pretty crazy practice. Like this is a real thing that's like been documented like through thousands of years of history.
The problem with this is that you can't necessarily discount being channeled. It's like you can't just write it off altogether, but you also can't trust anybody who claims that they're channeling anything.
Right. It's the medium, man. It's like Marshall McLuhan says, the medium is the message.
Or John Edwards. These people have ruined it for us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's coming through a human filter. So, I mean,
there you go. Corruptible by the fallacies of man.
These erroneously or even falsely attributed practices east and west have not prevented generations of practitioners from having some kind of psychological, if not paranormal, experience or even enlightenment itself. Neither has the fictional nature of the Necronomicon been a stumbling block for those who see it as a gateway to genuine and existing alternate realities, even if it means risking insanity, as in the case of the mad Arab before them. But what, if anything, are most spiritual practices but some form of creative fiction? All the great spiritual luminaries are legendary, and yet little historical evidence demonstrates that they even existed, let alone support the miraculous actions they performed. King Solomon, Jesus, Padmasambhava, Rosicrucian founder Christian Rosenkreutz, noted 14th century author Nicholas Flamel and his wife, the renowned benefactress Perenelle Flamel, and countless others exist more or less as inspirational legends than historical facts. Yet this does not in any way diminish the power of their personalities or works. As we discussed, an individual can be exalted after death by various occult rites and turned into a focal point, their surviving consciousness even recruited to the task, for leading others on a particular spiritual quest. The number of saints in Roman Catholicism and other religions is a virtual testimony to the truth of this. So then should it be any different with a fictional personality wrapped around a fictional book containing a cosmological vision compiled out of historical mythologies connected to a real author? Is it surprising that the book and its mythos take on a life of its own, spawning not only additional published stories and legends, but also a variety of serious occult practices, academic studies, board games, and even efforts at reproducing the very thing, a demonic occult text itself? The name for this is now fan fiction or live-action roleplay, LARP. Yeah. Or ARGs, which are becoming increasingly popular. Alternate reality games is like the ones they're usually used in viral marketing campaigns for shitty movies, but there's a few cool ones out there. Or what's the word I'm looking for here?
The one place that I know Necronomicon was real big is in the world of Evil Dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the go-to fallback evil, book of spells, basically.
Yeah, the two main characters in that entire universe are the Necronomicon and Ash.
Yeah. This also plays into, from alternate reality gaming into the worlds of postmodern narratives, such as metafiction, hyperstition, hypersigils, i.e. see Grant Morrison episode in Comics. And he closes with, the final question is, where does fantasy end and alternate reality, or rather a new reality, begin?
Is this, and I guess this comes into question, the ability of man to manifest?
Yes, that's definitely a big part of it. As you're about to see, this gentleman I'm about to discuss sort of set the spark for that. A fellow by the name of Kenneth Grant, 1924 to 2011, was a super kooky, spooky, ookie dookie, hyper psychedelic, onironastic necronaut.
5 minutes.
Oh, I get to use those big words. He was a UK occultist and former secretary / disciple of Crowley, longtime adherent of his thelemic magical practices, and arguably the unofficial heir apparent to Crowley's own lineage as ex-outer head of his sex magical secret society known as the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO. A friend and pupil of the UK's most notable post-Crowley occultist as well, Austin Osman Spare, from which contemporary sigilization techniques originated, not to mention, quite literally, a visionary artist, as well as Gerald Gardner, the big bad grandpappy of what is today known as Wicca, and would later become not just the founder, but also a member of his own occult order, the extraterrestrial intercourse-obsessed Typhonian Order, basically considered reigning champion of the resurgence and curation of this alleged extremely ancient, dark Ophidian occult system known as the Typhonian Current, an immense influence on postmodern occultism, not to mention contemporary chaos magic to boot. He's been described by those who knew him as both the elder statesman of 20th century magic and, by Alan Moore no less, as a schoolboy gone berserk on brimstone aftershave. Grant himself admits that he was unable to acquire a practical approach to mundane affairs, meaning he couldn't hold down a job for shit, and his sanity has been questioned on numerous occasions, while his unique, we'll say, occult literary output has been described as being either brilliantly imaginative and or utterly incomprehensible. Yet nonetheless, many view him as a revealer of deep esoteric truths regarding the darkest aspects of nature. Ooh, it is likely his own occult experiments into lucid dreaming, astral travel, and remote viewing that were likely responsible for his own inspiration of reasoning behind eventually incorporating Lovecraft's Cthulhu Mythos into his work. And with that, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back discussing Kenneth Grant's incorporation of said magical system into his own, as well as the Simon Necronomicon. And we're back. Did you miss us? I know I did. Anywho, continuing with Kenneth Grant. In his book, The Magical Revival, 1972, Grant claimed that Lovecraft was in fact a practicing occultist, but was too terrified to ultimately complete his initiation into the higher Kabbalistic realms, outer worlds, and or hyperdimensions. He states, Lovecraft seems not to have passed the final pylons of initiation as evidenced by his stories and particularly his poems, in which, at the last dreadful encounter, he invariably recoiled, resolved not to know what horrors lay concealed behind the mask of his most critical incarnation. He was haunted by his dweller on the threshold, failed to resolve the enigma of his own particular sphinx, and because of this, no doubt, feared to use drugs in case his nightmare visions swept him beyond the point of no recall. Understandably terrified of crossing the abyss, he forever recoiled on the brink and spent his life in a vain attempt to deny the potent entities that moved him. Little wonder the tales he wrote are among the most hideous and powerful ever penned. Grant, in the same publication, also goes on to later state, fiction, as a vehicle, has often been used by occultists to present ideas not acceptable to the everyday mind. Limited by prejudice and spoiled by breadwinning education, can be made to slip past the censor, and by means of the novel, the poem, the short story, be effectually planted in soil that would otherwise reject or destroy them. Grant also states, in another of his books, Against the Light, what may in fact be perhaps his most thought-provoking interpretation concerning the works of Lovecraft, saying, have you ever considered, dear reader, that every time you awaken from the dreams of night or the day, the forces set in motion by the characters and events that occurred therein do not cease abruptly with your change of consciousness to daytime or to nighttime? No, indeed, those creatures of your dream world, set in motion by impulses you no longer own, contrive to expend their energies until their impetus subsides, or until, dear reader, you sleep again and take up a further chapter in the destiny of your creations, which are, all of them, only and entirely yourself. Apparently, much of Lovecraft's work so strongly resonated with Grant was because, according to late occultist and once upon a time member of Grant's Typhonian OTO, Andrew Chumbley, was because he saw the eternally submerged state of Cthulhu as dead, not dreaming, not dead, but dreaming, as being a metaphor for the subconscious mind, while another Typhonian OTO colleague by the name of Michael Staley has written that he's almost entirely sure that by extraterrestrial, Grant means to use the term in much the same way that Lovecraft also did, meaning beyond human consciousness. With this, of course, playing directly back into Grant's predominant overriding theme and thesis throughout the entirety of his work, being that, essentially, in its most purified and concise form, is that mankind's only hope for reaching an eventual level of psycho-spiritual evolution, which will allow us to one day soon, and the way things are, the sooner the better, outgrow our current earthly bodies in such a manner or degree that we'll finally be able to truly become cosmic denizens, ensuring survival for future generations as we forever explore the vast and infinite expanses of both the universe and all creation. Grant would later also act as more of the spark, the impetus behind the division, disorganization, if you will, of hoarded mystical secrets, He was very open with a lot of this stuff, although he was also sometimes very quite obtuse, almost nonsensical. Some would even say downright fucking insane. But
obstinate?
Yes, that's the word. He used a lot of Kabbalistic, Kabbalah with the, the weird like mathematical games with numbers and letters and equivalencies between words, numerical equivalencies between words, and finding, interconnected links behind them and whatnot.
That's just Hebrew, man.
Yeah, he used a lot of that to sort of back up a lot of his claims, and he will take it in some very strange, almost impenetrable avenues. But he also played a large part in sort of bridging the gap of 20th century occultism between Crowley all the way to chaos magic, roughly the 1980s, making its appearance.
Through Moore and Morrison.
Yeah, and before them, I mean, they are some of the more popular exponents, but some of the first champions of the movement were figures such as Phil Hine, Peter Carroll. Oh, man, a lot of people. Genesis P. Orridge from, what was that band? Psychic TV, as well as the group known as the Illuminates of Thanateros, which were like one of the big sort of chaos magical societies to sort of spring onto the scene. Yeah, occultism was for the longest time, as we've seen in our previous episodes, long time the pursuit of, let's just say what it is, rich old white dudes with money to burn, basically. So it created this whole country club environment, basically, of occultists who are all slapping each other on the ass and congratulating each other, but still at the same time getting into pissing contests about who was more enlightened or magically, inclined, etc. And it also had a huge, like, baked in Masonic influence to where everything was hierarchical. They all adhered to, like grades and gradients, etc., that put you on various separate levels. So much like
a degree of Masonic-hood or even like I can't say the word, but like a beaten level.
It was basically like you have to do this much to get to this place, so you are initiated into
Mary
a certain
Kay of it is Zeta ways.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah. All that stuff was just sort of baked into occultism at the time. And this sort of helped like set the road for the more egalitarian, all-encompassing, hey, everyone's invited to the party, chaos magic, that basically just expounded that belief is a tool, and however you use it, get whatever gets results, basically, was the number one underlying theme to that. So from there, we now jump to
the inward.
Look inwards. The most famous modern day representation of the Necronomicon, and that would be the infamous paperback Simon Necronomicon.
It's a paperback Harlequin romance love novel to the dead.
That's right. And how much for all this dreaded ancient knowledge? About $4.50.
American.
Yeah. Although there have ultimately been too fucking many real-life versions or interpretations of the Necronomicon printed throughout the years, perhaps the only other one particular version, other than which I'm about to speak, that is even really worth mentioning is the monumentally badass art book which collects the various works of H.R. Geiger, most well known for creating the alien or aliens from the various films in the series about aliens.
In relation to the Geiger counter?
No, but I believe the film series is called Alien. Don't go quoting me on that. Out of the many contenders for eventual reigning champion of all possible variations of the Necronomicon, the most infamous, insidious, unholy, strange, dangerous, straight up edgy as fuck, as well as surprisingly being the most financially successful best-selling version to boot, would be, or would have been, actually it still is, from last I heard, the Simon Necronomicon.
Your King James Bible, if you will.
Yes. If some goth or metalhead commit a violent crime in the 1980s or early 90s, there's a likely chance that some incredibly credulous, highly naive, and or utterly misinformed police officer wandered around throughout the defendant's home at one point or another, stumbled across an old paperback copy of the Simon Necronomicon, then began sweating profusely as he made a loud gulping sound, and then awkwardly attempted to haphazardly bag the fucking thing like it was some kind of patient zero of radioactive ass cancer.
He's got latex gloves and cooking tongs and a fucking Ziploc bag of, it just says...
evil.
Yeah.
Ziploc bag full of evil.
And then on top of that,
when did they let Vincent Price on the force?
His partner's throwing around some crack.
Oh yeah, they were sprinkling crack on everything back then. Sure enough, during any of the highly televised trials, prosecuting attorney for the state in situations such as these would just pick up the Necronomicon in court and wave it around. It's happened.
This book is no good. It's telling everybody to go out and do things like kill their only son because a voice in their head said to do
it. Good call.
And then being told at the last minute to hold back because they got to go have unholy sex with a woman they just met at the back of a Dickie's barbecue.
Sounds exactly like what our creator would do.
Yeah. Non-missionary. Thank you very much. Yeah, they wave it around for...
That's Southern
I'm so glad you mentioned that story, man.
He sounds like he's got the right cut to be a prosecutor. He can turn anything into.
I'm just a regular old Southern prosecutor. Yeah, usually it results in them waving around for every lummox in from the city of Podunk, located in the state of who gives a shit, who would end up being thoroughly riddled with the disease of heebie-jeebies, ensuring a win for the state, death penalty for the defendant, sound bites at 9 o'clock, and a flock of goth kids probably getting the shit kicked out of them by the ignorant rednecks or preppies and dumb jocks at their high school the next day.
You wear the same mascara as my mom. Fuck you.
There's probably even a copy sitting around somewhere in the Clinton household or on the shelf of, I don't know, Jimmy Buffett, George Soros, Pope, Johnny B, Elon Musk, Von Yeezy III's fucking office place somewhere. And surely...
That's all one person, by the way.
This is the proof of Illuminati membership for at least a 3-week probationary trial period, so we can get to know him, you know.
Yeah.
Basically, pretty much everyone even remotely interested in that sort of shit from the year 1980 onward and upward probably owned and or borrowed a copy from someone at one point or another since then. The actual story behind the creation and publication of this book began at an occult shop in New York, actually, called The Magical Child. Yeesh. Okay. The Magical Child, owned by a man named Herman Slater, and was essentially the one-stop shop for any and everybody who was in with the outside crowd, i.e. proto-hipsters, which, believe it or not, was at the time a bit of a cultural nexus for various meetings of the minds. It was there, allegedly, that a fellow known to go by the name that he likely gave himself, Alan Cabal, again, yeesh, said to be somewhat savvy, as he was apparently exactly the type of dickhead who'd sell chicken bones to someone as human finger bones so they could try their hand at necromancy. He was supposedly quick enough on the uptake to realize there was an easily fleeceable market ready to spend plenty of their money on a spurious, genuine Necronomicon. And so he'd formulated a con, or plan as he called it, to gather the stereotypical con job crew to help him write, assemble, package, and market this great endeavor, with an OTO member on the layout and design, while much of the text was modeled upon the Wiccan Book of Shadows, as well as another potentially spurious dark tome coming from all the way from the Middle Ages.
I was going to say that book would be pronounced differently in Massachusetts. It's a wicked book of Tombstone, dude. It's fucking great, man.
Wicked huge fat kid selling on the corner. Also, most of it was cribbed from a potentially spurious middle-aged book called The Goetia. Hey, Goetia, thanks for playing. The book was published in 1980 by Avon, and for a short time was even being sold door-to-door alongside with their famous makeup. No, kidding. It was Avon Publishing House. The evil little paperback that could was a runaway overnight certified double platinum smash shit. Even today, copies still sell fairly well, which is undoubtedly a feat no supposed occult tome has ever achieved. It would later be claimed that the alleged author, Alan Cabal, was in fact just as full of shit as he sounds on paper, when he claimed that this Simon character, who, supposedly wrote the whole thing, refused to attend any book signings. Giving this tidbit of hot goss even the slightest bit of consideration, taken in conjunction with the hindsight of passing time, it would come to light many, many years later that Simon was perhaps modern-day occult scholar and researcher of the esoteric conspiracy theories, aliens, and Nazi war criminals in hiding, as well as also, oddly enough, being one of my favorite authors, Peter Levenda. Although it would seem that he's apparently taken every occasion to adamantly deny such claims, as well as refusing to talk at all about any of his own possible occult practices.
Deny all allegations hurled at my persons.
What do you think about the allegations? Huh? Hey, what do you think about the allegations? Is that annoying? I'll stop. Yeah, he prefers to wear the hat of a scholar as well as a writer of what may or may not be true fictions pertaining to numerous occult topics.
That's a bad hat, Harry.
Yeah, bad hat. Supposedly, some commentators would later discuss many reports revolving around the fact that when utilizing the magic systems therein of the Necronomicon, they have, in fact, had instances in which working with this system has been known to be, which they know to be 100% inauthentic, totally fake, made up, which strangely enough go on to swear up and down that they actually had on occasion elicited some form of mystical knowledge being imparted, while others go so far as to claim it's instigated observable, oftentimes unsettling and disturbing paranormal phenomena. One skeptic theorized this is due largely in part to any user of this magical system being, from lack of a better word, primed in their belief due to the book having such a suitably spooky reputation, while those on the other side of the fence believe its effectiveness is due to the fact it's inextricably interwoven with what may or may not be actual magical formulae, either cribbed or combined from both Crowley and various Sumerian or ancient Mesopotamian magic spells.
Does this go back to the whole because people are afraid of it, it creates the reality, like that's the Slender Man conversation?
Sort of, yeah. That was like part of the theorizing behind how people may have actually had otherworldly experiences out of it.
Basically, what happened was, if I'm getting this correct, they took a thing that had been mentioned in passing, and like, what we haven't capitalized on yet? This. And we have a basic business plan, and then all they had to do was assign value to it.
Apparently, this all started out, the whole Simon edition started out as all these dudes sitting around drinking, getting fucked up. And they're like, what would be funny and make money? And then they threw it together, and supposedly...
Just like the ones who chose the stories of the Bible did?
Like the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah.
We've come full cycle.
Yeah. Supposedly, they also built in, like, magical traps to it to, like, I don't know, prove if people were actually, like, an occultist worth their salt, etc. Basically, it's elitist dickhead bullshit with, like, traps that could essentially send people insane if they didn't pay attention. I don't know. The book straight up says there's no effective way to banish the entities called forth, which is like the number one thing that you need when you're dealing with that kind of shit. You have to have a go away button, basically. But of course, all of this simply boils down to the key word being belief. And it's here that we are led to chaos magic.
Back to the future of chaos magic.
That's right. As previously mentioned, late occultist Kenneth Grant, despite being considered by many, including a handful of his occultist contemporaries, considered an outright kook in his own right. Despite this assessment, he undoubtedly bridged the magical gap from the days of Crowley to the eventual birth of what would later become known as chaos magic, once again championed by names such as Genesis P. Orridge, Phil Hine, Peter Carroll, etc., Grant Morrison, Alan Moore. Not only were chaos magicians gathering up all the long-hoarded secrets of magic and mysticism, then turning around and pretty much giving it all away for free, no less, they were also injecting some much-needed humor and levity into what has long been an elitist field of study and practice, predominantly populated with entirely pompous, dour, demented, incredibly megalomaniacal, and highly egotistical personalities whose incessant need to engage in mystical pissing contests, as well as the more earthly tactic of settling disputes in what is that utmost mundane aspect of conflict arbitration, extreme litigiousness, i.e., I'm taking you to court for the mystic powers. So stupid. When oddly enough, many of the exact same individuals would often openly and with utterly no apparent self-awareness nor sense of irony be the first to let everyone know they've supposedly long ago shed their egos in the process of attaining higher spiritual and intellectual advancement.
So wait, you're saying that these guys and their ever-extending pissing contests to be more magical and be more, I guess, magic points.
Yeah. It's just like punk rock points.
They sued each other over who had the authority of the magic.
It especially goes in with like occult societies, like the OTO and shit like that. Like, man, these people took each other to court all the time.
This is exactly the same crap that happens to every religion, man. It gets so convoluted by like our human part of our humanity.
Your Honor, I propose that this dickhead is granted.
I mean, they're freaking in a pissing contest about who lost their ego. For
exactly, I know, that's the irony of it, man. Like, but yeah,
no, I'm the most humble. Okay, and I'll take you to court to prove it.
But yeah, that's where chaos magic comes in, and they kind of exploded that whole shit show. A lot of that going on, and we generally have chaos magic to thank us for more or less accentuating the point that Excelsior, that reality is literally what you make it. And so in closing, when taking into consideration many of the reoccurring tropes, themes, motifs, symbols, and or archetypes that are quite often either elaborated upon in the fictional works of Lovecraft or that have eventually over time ended up becoming one way or another inextricably interlinked with Lovecraft conceptually, as if through a twisting-turning telephone game autonomously being played by a seemingly unseen yet semi-sentient entity that is the cyclopean monolithic entity of pop culture. And it isn't all that entirely out of the blue, kooky, spooky, totally psychotic, nor even completely idiotic within this particular contemporary cultural milieu to assume that Lovecraft may have quite actually, in fact, been a mentally fractured or just utterly demolished psyche who might be, in a fucked up, utter failure of a way, some unknown form of oracle with weird antennae, psychologically vomiting up some inner space transmissions from beings deep down in the darkest, dankest recesses of what is essentially his potentially botched abortion of a as yet undiscovered subconscious faculty that quite possibly expands far beyond the stars, planets, perhaps even time and space. One could definitely make a solid argument for this button-down, hyper-tight-ass, ultra-mega L7 weenie of a scaredy cat being one of the premier invisible architects of the 21st century zeitgeist. He's a prototypical precursor of what is today commonly referred to as ancient alien and or astronaut hypothesis, alongside also being one of the uncredited curators of the much more esoteric forms of what are essentially the vast cosmic quantum physics interlaced interpretations of chaos-centric and indifferent models of what is possibly the ancient Gnostic equivalent of simulation theory, with his whole ignorance is bliss, 'tis better not knowing or even seeking, is being conducive to a good night's sleep. And this universe is best left undisturbed style, anti-enlightenment, frightened by the terror of the unknown, over anti-intellectualism, which every so often seems to rear up its big old dumb ugly head on occasion. Not only that, but he's also the visual epitome of what one immensely inferior, extremely aesthetically deficient, living assembly of defective recessive genes.
That's code for ugly.
Yeah, with completely delusional beliefs that he represents any biologically ideal specimen that's nothing less than the apex of creation. Conceptually seems to fall between the ranges of some ever-shifting potential spectrum that at one end is simply just sickening in its intensely utter ridiculousness, which extends all the way to the other end, which is succinctly summarized by pretty much saying, nerd! However, in his literary and cultural contributions for which he is truly remembered if history continues to provide us with examples of further connections between aliens and the occult, such as Crowley's contact with the entity known as Lamb, that's somewhat superficially similar in appearance to the ubiquitous gray aliens we know today, and drawn decades before their appearance through numerous media, even before the description given in the somewhat harrowing hypnosis sessions recordings of Betty and Barney Hill, recounting the lost memories of their abduction experience, or even the alleged connections between certain occult rites being performed out in the desert by Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, which were intended to, quote-unquote, open a gate in our reality and summoning something over to our side, perfectly coinciding with the very first of what would soon be many UFO sightings that would eventually culminate with a supposed spacecraft having crashed at Roswell, as well as the ever-growing amount of speculation upon mankind's origins with our potential missing history or the possibility of lost civilizations, all of which seem to include numerous different theories concerning the existence or true nature of such mythical figures as the Nephilim or the Anunnaki, etc. Whether you believe in it or not, this is the world we're now living in. And as I'm quite sure Lovecraft once attested, one mustn't necessarily need believe in Santa Claus to expect that there shall be presents under the tree upon awakening on Christmas morning. To translate, basically, it doesn't matter if you believe in something or not. Either way, those that do will be directed by or dictate their actions upon whatever it is they have and will continue to place all of their belief in. And with that, I'd like to say, so be good, for goodness sake. Oh, yeah, somebody's coming. Somebody's coming.
I was going to ask. Since we're close to wrapping it up.
Yeah.
There is boxes under the tree here in the bunker still.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the fuck's going on there. But,
Santa asked me to keep it.
Oh, God. What do you want, Cornelius?
Cornelius, if I had a gun, I would keep it in my pocket.
I'd wave it around and make you.
Cornelius, are you okay? What's going on? Why do you sound like Peter Lorre?
You sound like my first boss at DISD.
Yeah, get out of here.
Okay, I guess he's done with. Maybe he was coming to check on us.
Did he take the Santa box with him?
I hope so.
I wasn't looking. I was looking at his fucked up face from the lightning bolt that destroyed it.
No, yeah, you were pulling triple duty with him in the room.
I was trying to corral him back out.
So yeah, man, that's the Necronomicon. It's one of those things, as Matt mentioned earlier, like Slender Man is a perfect co-example. Something we all know is 100% entirely fictional, and yet it has these strange ramifications upon reality that we build and create.
Yeah, we witnessed the birth of that.
Yeah, and strangely enough, in our world of quote unquote fake news and the truth nod up and down, or the truth side to side, like the blending of fiction and reality and where the lies stop and the honesty begins, I think we'll probably be seeing a lot more, not necessarily examples just like those, but, these ridiculous narratives involving baby eaters in charge of,
It's whose truth is the truthiest.
Exactly.
And who's the most believable, like that Southern lawyer prosecuting that Necronomicon book holder.
I say,
look at here.
I say, Cthulhu Mythos, yeah.
Uh-oh.
What's for dinner tonight?
Cthulhu. It's what's for dinner.
Oh, God. It's made of peephole.
I had barbecue for breakfast, for real.
Lunch or brunch.
That was a good grill out session we had there.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Calamari.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to me rail on this episode. This was our season 2 finale. We wanted to pack it full of as much infotainment as we can give you.
There will be a quiz later.
Yes. We were just at Fan Expo. Some of our footage and audio of that will be going up soon. If you'd like to get hold of us, then contact us at, gentlemen,
Facebook.com/Kooks, Cranks, and spelled out Iconoclast. You can check us out if you want to email us. We are at kookscranksandIconoclast@gmail.com. And if you want to check out our fan expo expose,
nice.
Check out kooks-cranks-and-iconoclast.com.
Hell yeah. Any closing thoughts? Anyone else?
My mind is blown.
Man, I'm bleeping terrified of everything that's unfolded here today. And,
yeah. I'm constantly terrified, and I weep for the future.
I'm very concerned.
And other children.
I'm very concerned that if I go ask for a copy of the Necronomicon, I'll be blacklisted. Kind of like when I asked for
eugenics is real.
I tried to slide that in. I remember I went to the Army Navy store once and I was like, yeah, I was looking for the Anarchist Cookbook. He's like, I can take your name and number and maybe we can order it for you. It'll be 2
Flowers
weeks from now.
by Irene.
Yeah, it's Henry Crinkle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, ain't that a goddamn geographical oddity? 2 weeks from everywhere, like that movie. And he was like, oh, well, you know, this is going to take some time to hunt that book down. You know, I got to get on that Ramazon forest.
A Starbucks next to a Starbucks, it must be the nexus of the universe.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming in. Next time you see us, it will be season 3. And not to give too much away, but we're going to be getting dirty. So you'll definitely want to come and check that out.
It's Bruce Lee.
Walk like water, everyone. We'll see you then. Thanks for coming by.
Love you madly.
See you next time.
Bye.
See ya.